Just confirm that that is recording. Great. So welcome everyone today to our webinar about applying to NIFA competitive education grants as a small or mid-sized institution. My name is Kellyanne Jones-Jampgard. I'm a program specialist in the Division of Community and Education with NIFA. My specific programs are the Hispanic Serving Institutions Education Program, as well as the Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian Serving Institutions programs. So if you're interested in those, I would be the appropriate contact. As I said, I'm moderating today's session, and thank you all for joining us. There we go. Today's agenda. First, we'll have just a general welcome from Dr. Parag Chitnis, NIFA's acting director, some general introductory information about applying to NIFA and an overview of the competitive education programs that we have. And then the meat of the webinar today will be talks from successful awardees. And we have 3 different programs represented with 4 presentations from the Research and Extension Experiences for Undergraduates, the Professional Development for Agricultural Literacy, and the Hispanic Serving Institutions Education Grants programs. Then we will have some time for breakout rooms with each of our presenters, where you can ask more specific questions about their experiences as grantees and those programs. And then we'll come back for a general question and answer session and adjourn for the day. As I mentioned, we will be recording this presentation, and we'll make the recording as well as the PowerPoint that I'm showing available to everyone afterwards. And as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions for either NIFA program staff or for our grantees, please type them in the chat, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can throughout the presentation. Thank you. And I would like to actually turn the presentation over for our welcome from Dr. Parag Chitnis. He is NIFA's acting director. And so Dr. Chitnis, you're welcome to start.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kellyanne. I want, on behalf of NIFA, I want to welcome you all to this webinar. Good afternoon, everyone. This is really a great opportunity for us to be able to provide you the information that you may need to apply to NIFA's grants. NIFA has recently undergone a big changes, a lot of new staff, and we are all really excited to focus on our values related to public service. We want to improve service to the applicants that we send us applications, as well as the grantees that receive funding from us and implement the programs that we get money from Congress. So we are organizing regular listening sessions with our stakeholders, particularly minority serving institutions, small and mid-sized institutions. This is one of NIFA's priorities. How do we really increase the participation of underserved and underrepresented institutions in our regular grants programs? And that's something that we will continue to do by focusing on targeted outreach to these communities, these institutions, and this is one of the webinars in that series. So I want to, I think, really thank all the organizers of NIFA staff for their dedication and organizing this workshop to realize NIFA's vision of serving you better. Increasing applications from minority serving institutions is our priority, and we want to really provide information that is fast, that will make those applications successful. Today's session will focus on 4 successful education projects. We have scheduled another session in February for research and outreach programs, and I think those will be also very helpful. So again, thank you for your attendance to this particular webinar, and we are looking forward to receiving your applications, as well as if any questions you may have, any or suggestions suggestions you may have in improving these in the future. Thank you.
Thank
Back
you
to
so
you,
much,
Kellyanne.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chitnis, for the welcome and for your time today and joining us. We really appreciate it. First, I'd like to provide just a little bit of background about the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. NIFA is an agency within the Research, Education, and Economics mission area of the USDA. In fiscal year 2020, the USDA's budget overall was $153 billion, and $1.7 billion of that was allocated to NIFA specifically. NIFA is USDA's primary extramural funding agency, which means we give our money away in the form of grants to people. And so we provide capacity grants to land grant universities. We will not be discussing capacity grants during the webinar, but please feel free to reach out if you'd like more information about that. And we also provide competitive grants that support research, education, and extension missions at various types of institutions. And these can range from land grant universities to non-land grants, minority serving institutions, community colleges, nonprofits, and various other types of institutions. And if you're wondering whether you or your organization would be eligible to apply for our various grants programs, please look at our requests for applications, or RFAs, as you'll hear me say throughout the presentation, and our eligibility criteria is defined in each of our RFAs for each program so that you know whether you're eligible or not. And if you're completely unsure, as this is your first time hearing about NIFA, feel free to reach out and our program staff would be happy to help you figure out which programs would be the best fit for your interests and which ones you would be eligible for. So this infographic here represents the many competitive education programs that NIFA has, by which we want to support the next generation of diverse food and agricultural scientists. So as you can see here, you can see kind of our big buckets. We fund K-12 through undergraduate and graduate and professional degree programs. We do programs to universities, to colleges, to nonprofits, but we also fund fellowship programs to individual trainees as well at the graduate level as well as the postdoctorate level. And then we also have programs where we fund minority serving institutions such as the 1890s, the Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges, insular areas, and Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions. So we have a very wide breadth of programming within education at NIFA. And as you can see, it would take all day to talk about all of these programs, but I encourage you to go to the link provided on this slide and you'll be able to see what each of these programs is about and find out more information about them. But the specific programs that we're going to highlight today in this webinar, I've squared off in red. So the Hispanic serving institutions, PDAL, as you can see in the K-12 section, and then our EEU, which covers both community college, two-year colleges, and then four-year colleges as well. So as I mentioned, we are going to spotlight 3 education programs today, and we hope to share with you the successful projects and focus on the grantees' individual experiences applying for the grant program, managing their project activities, their funding and award requirements, and share what has worked well, what barriers they've encountered through the process, and what advice they may have to you all, especially as aspiring applicants to our programs. And then, as is most important with our funding programs, what impacts are you having on your organizations, your students, your communities in the food and agricultural sciences? And our awardees range from receiving grants a couple years ago to just having received a grant in the last fiscal year. So hopefully you'll get a good sense of kind of the breadth of how experiences may change over time in our grant programs. And as Dr. Chitnis mentioned, we'd like you to save the date for February 9th, 2021. We'll have another webinar that will focus on successful research and integrated projects. And it'll be a similar format to this one. So if you have any feedback about what programs you'd like to see represented or what you'd like to hear more about at NIFA, please reach out and let us know as we plan that February 9th webinar. So the first program that we're going to focus on is the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative, or AFRI program. In FY 2020, the total program funding for this was $425 million. AFRI is NIFA's flagship competitive grants program, and its priority areas are outlined in the 2008 Farm Bill, which authorized this program. And it supports education, research, extension, and integrated projects. Integrated projects simply refer to any combination of education, research, and extension. So projects that are very much interdisciplinary. And AFRI has 3 RFAs with multiple priority areas in each, and those 3 are sustainable agricultural systems, foundational and applied science programs, and the education and workforce development. And as I mentioned, we are going to focus today on the education and workforce development parts of AFRI. So the AFRI education and workforce development funding in fiscal year 2020 was $49 million. And the program goals are really to enhance agricultural literacy and workforce training. And the main programs through which that is accomplished are the professional development for agricultural literacy and the agricultural workforce training grants. Then developing pathways, which would be the REEU program, which we're going to hear about today. And then the advancing science goal, which is mainly through fellowships to graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. And the AFRI educational workforce development programs in general support professional development for K-14 educators, workforce training at community, junior, and technical colleges, training of undergraduate students in research and extension, and then, as I mentioned, fellowships for trainees such as pre and postdoc students. And the deadlines for fiscal year 2021 for these various AFRI programs will be announced, we anticipate in late 2020 or early 2021. So please keep an eye out for those if you're interested in applying for AFRI programs. And so the first program that we will highlight and hear from awardees will be the Research and Extension Experiences for Undergraduates, the REEU program. And this program promotes research and extension learning experiences for undergraduates to develop their skills needed for successful entry into the ag workforce. And these projects really provide great hands-on experiences in research for students, strong mentoring experiences, and allow students the opportunities to participate in projects and programs that not only benefit them as future leaders in the agricultural workforce, but also the communities and institutions that they're in. And you can see at the bottom there for fiscal year 2020, our maximum award range from about $400,000 to $500,000, depending on the length of your program. And so the first spotlight that we will have is Monica Preeby and Matthew Swenson from Green River College. And their project is entitled Experiential Learning to Accelerate Technical Education, and they were awarded this award in 2018. And you can see their contact information on the bottom of the slide. And I will call on Monica and Matthew to unmute themselves and to give their presentation. And just as a reminder, Monica and Matthew, please let me know when you want me to advance your slides for you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kellyanne. I'm Monica Paulson-Preeb, and on this webinar with us is Matthew Swenson. He's the Director of Grants for Green River College and a formidable force in terms of us getting grants at this small level institution. And we can talk about that a little bit more in our breakout session as how we manage that. I run the Natural Resources program for Green River College, and it's a fairly small program. About 125 students right now, and we run them both through our multiple associate's levels degrees. So we have 5 associate's level degrees dealing with natural resource management, and we have a bachelor's of applied science as well. And so throughout this, we're producing our graduates that are running straight into the workforce, right into forestry related, natural resource related jobs. Our student population is a little bit non-traditional in that our average age is still mid-30s. A lot of people are coming back from their first careers and deciding that they want to do something more applied, get outside. 50% of the population we serve within our program is low income. We have 30 to 35%, depending on the year, female enrollment, and sitting just under 30% with military veterans or people that are recently unemployed. So we have a big swell of people looking for that permanent applied job. We do all of this with 4 full-time faculty and 1 full-time staff, as well as a great host of industry partners. We hire our adjuncts straight out of the industry pool. So people that are working full-time in the industry come in and will teach a class throughout the year. We really focus on this applied learning aspect, getting out and doing things with our hands. We are doing something wrong if we're not outside 60% of the time, and that's what we tell ourselves. We really need to be out and applied and doing this. And that was a big component of what industry was telling us. And so we work very closely with industry. We check in very frequently with them. About every 3 years, we do a follow-up visit to see how our curriculum's doing. We dovetail with our internships as well as capstone projects and really try to seek their engagement through our advisory committee. In addition to this, we have a big collaboration with other educators, both in our school and other schools. So I believe Grace Harbor College is on this call, and we have done previous grant work with them in trying to get both of our bachelor's programs up off the ground and running. We also have really important community partnerships, both with industry, but also with the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, who is a very close neighbor to us. We do a lot of work with them and are looking forward to future collaboration. So Kellyanne, if you wouldn't mind progressing the slide. So why should we pursue grants at this tiny little level that we are at? What we have found is that when we're trying to reach diverse populations, people that are climbing mountains in terms of students that, you know, they may have to work full-time while being in school, or they may have kids at home. They may have be the first person to attend college. And so these grants are what we're finding is making the difference for getting these students into the program. So we were able to use some grants like the NSF grant for scholarships, for example. We were able to collaborate with Grace Harbor and focus in on tribal nations as well as veteran services under the USDA NIFA HEC grant. And then we've also increased our student engagement through cohort building activities, getting information on how our curriculum's managed by the students as well as the employers, where we need to strengthen ourselves under other grants. And this is the aspect where this current grant that we're discussing today falls, in that we are building on our applied learning, but doing so in a meaningful way so that we can learn from it and improve these for the program overall. So next slide, Kelly, please. Thank you. So this is just some of what this looks like. We're outside 60% of the time, but this particular grant funds a series of summer trips where we get anywhere from 14 to 21 days around the clock with these students, smaller groups of students, and we load up in one of those vans you see there in that picture, and we go out to the field where these things are taking place. And so you can see in the middle picture, this is road building and road laid out for forestry practices. You can see on the upper right, this is our bachelor's class out looking at different forest harvesting techniques and looking at on the ground what they're doing. And there's a lot of learning that happens on a big scale with these industry partners, as well as peer-to-peer. And you can see down in that lower left picture, we have 2 students that are teaching each other about the geology out there on one of their field trips, looking at unstable slopes, which is a pretty major concept for us in forestry and forest management. And then we get to partner with community institutions and go out and work on their land and do some of these activities. And this is down at the Fisheries Enhancement Group on the sound there, and we're doing some invasive removal, and we were able to work with them to learn about how all these things impact salmon. So next slide, please. So in this experience is kind of topped off with a backpacking experience where we hike through a series of watersheds and we look at different management. And so the picture on the upper left is looking at how different fire, you can see where the fire burned, impacted this area, and looking at, they go and look at different forestry practices and how that can impact wildfire patterns. A lot of our learning happens around the campfire at night. So when we group up at our campsite, we have readings and discussions, and we pull on the day's activities, and then students are immersed in this. My trip that I took 2 summers ago was actually 3 separate backpacking trips, and we got to see a real diverse area through these trips that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. And so on the lower left, that's one of my favorite pictures. That's a gentleman. He is a retired Marine that came back to school and would have self-stated, he never would have had this opportunity in his entire life had it not been for this. And so we outfitted him with gear from our gear library, and we made it happen. And he's out there with the biggest smile I've ever seen on his face. This made a big influence in his career too, because he actually got hired right out of this this trip, and is now working for that, actually on that same landing that you saw previous slide, doing some reforestation and silvicultural and compliance. So the picture in the bottom right shows that our students have a wide age diversity, and we also pair students up between our bachelor's programs and our associate's programs through this. And inherent in this is leadership and mentorship, and we focus on that around the campfire, through our readings, through our curriculum, but also so much of it just happens organically on the trail. So here we've got a military veteran in the middle teaching one of our younger students how to read a map really well, and some tricks, right? And they share these ideas. And then the picture I left for the last is the bottom center picture. And one of the reasons I really love this picture is twofold. One is there's snow on the ground, and we do all of these activities, rain, snow, sleet, hail, it doesn't matter. And the students are always up for it. And it really indicates the environment they're going to be learning in. The second reason I really like this is that one of those students there is deaf. And so we were able to take a trip with interpreters and do all of that collaboration and coordination to get a student that would otherwise not have access to the backcountry in a safe way, who had never had the opportunity to backpack, out there to experience these things and build on their resume so that they can bring that into their future careers. So with that, I'm available in the chat room if you guys want to follow up or have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we will have Zoom breakouts after all of the presentations so that you have an opportunity to hear more from our presenters. And especially for Green River College, with Matthew being a grant writer, that I think will be a really interesting experience to follow up on during our Zoom breakouts. And so next, there we go. We're going to jump right into our next REU Award Spotlight, who is Dr. Anna Sano from Bowie State University. And her project is entitled Bowie State University Agricultural Research and Extension Experiences for Undergraduates in collaboration with Edgerton University, Kenya. So we have an international component to this project. And this was awarded in fiscal year 2019. And so I'll invite Anne to unmute and give us her presentation.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Kellyanne, for this opportunity and privilege to share with us my experience, especially with regards to applying for this wonderful grant that I was very privileged to be awarded. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about Bowie State University. It's a historically Black college with a total student population around 6,000. So it's fairly a very small university, but I've been privileged to work in this university for the last 15 or so years. And so this specific project seeks to develop the pathway for minority undergraduate students, and especially as far as helping them to think careers in food and agricultural sectors. And one of the reasons why this was very important to me is just like I started by saying, we are a fairly small university, And my department is Natural Sciences Department, and I am a plant scientist. We really don't have agriculture as such, but I teach plant sciences. I teach general botany to all the students that are biology majors. For a long time, biology was the only major we had. Recently, we were blessed to add on chemistry as a major, and also bioinformatics and science education, chemistry really as a major. Bioinformatics is really just a program. So having taught in biology department, in a natural sciences department, where biology is the only major, most of our students that really major in biology only think of medical school. My experience is that a lot of them, even though they so much want to go to medical school, they really hardly are able to make it to medical school. And so my interest was, and with agricultural background, my master's is in agriculture. I was like, surely it would be so wonderful to share with these students that there are other careers. Not everybody must be a medical doctor, and we are grateful for the doctors, but there are other careers that are just equally rewarding. And one is such that in agricultural sector, and usually in my introductory classes, the general botany, I always challenge them about the fact that we cannot live without food. And we need people that are going to help us to produce enough food for the global population that is forever increasing. And so when I saw this opportunity, I thought that, wow, this would be a good idea to apply and have the students involved and give them experiential learning, hands-on learning, which of course has been proved by research that when students get involved in research, they are just motivated to do much better, even their general class achievements, but also just their critical thinking is developed. But even more importantly for this specific project, the fact that I learned that we could have an international component to the project made it very special to me, because now we have realized that the world is global. There are no boundaries, and it is time for us to produce scientists, and that's wonderful. But what about with a global component? When they are able to interact with people from other cultures and really be able to even just sit and think about how these people think, how do they interact? And I thought that this specific project is very important, because this project will not only give opportunities to students to do research, but in a global setting, and add onto their experience the global component. And for which reason, therefore, because I started by saying that we are also we don't have an agricultural school as such. So I collaborated with the international university that is an agricultural university. That is Egerton University, is agricultural university. And so I proposed a summer research experience, which is global in nature. And I collaborate with university, Egerton University professors, many of which have got excellent portfolios. They are all mentors of up to PhD students. And so I thought that our students spending a total of 8 weeks under their supervision and collaboration was a great idea. And hence, therefore, my application for this specific program. But even though it's really more international, I did add a local or domestic component, infusing research into the classroom, something that I love to do, I have done before, and have worked tremendously well for my students. So we therefore proposed this project, and we were able, we were very, very privileged to get awarded this grant. Maybe we can go to the next slide, Miss, please. And so I was asked to share a few advice with the possible applicants. What is it that maybe I learned as I applied, or maybe I did that made me successful? And one of the things that I wanted to share, there are quite a few, but one thing that I think is very important is that we need to understand the program goals. What is it that the program really wants to do? And that we should respond to that goal. And especially in this particular case, I started by telling you how I was struggling with the need to explain to my students that really there are alternative careers. And if you did not go to medical school, you still can have a very good career, very fulfilling career, a career that feeds the whole nation, the world, a career that feeds the doctors too. The doctors must eat also. So I thought that if you understand the need, especially in this case, our aim was to develop agricultural workforce. And so I wanted to share with my students, but how would I encourage them? So I saw an opportunity here that would meet this specific need that my students had. They needed to hear that there are other careers. And so I thought that the most important thing is, if we understand what the program goal is, the program goal is to develop a workforce for agricultural sector. And therefore I need to do that. So if I can explain how I am going to do that, then I think that that would be something very important. And secondly, I also learned in my work that the program officers or the national program leaders are always willing to help. When I started writing grants, and I needed to let us know that I have with me my sponsored program office manager. I'm so sorry, Dr. Atilia Covington is here with me. I should have introduced at the beginning. And she has been a great help to me, but I wanted to encourage us that the program officers, the national leaders, are just very, very willing to help. And what I did and I have learned to do is that I will write a one-pager, just a summary, which everybody, I believe, if you're doing grants, you know that you have to write at least one-page summary. And Dr. Covington and the office are always very willing and helping us to make sure that our idea is articulated well. And then the next level is to contact the program officer and share with them. And that's what I did. Shared with my program officer. I want to do this. What do you think? Does this really meet your program goals? And more often than not, they have been very helpful and they have advised appropriately. And in this particular case, they did. And I listened to their advice. I think one of the things that I was struggling with is that I wanted to do research, but I also wanted to do extension. And so my program is research and extension and international and actually local. So all of that together. And we worked through with the program officer that was working with me, and they were very helpful. And I wanted to encourage us that if we are considering applying, these dear ones are there to work with us and to help us. Now, my next thing is about time to complete the work. I think it really requires that we will manage our time. And once upon a time, in my earlier struggles with time, I learned that from my school, a small school, and maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself, but let me just say this, that time is usually my challenge. I teach 4 or 5 courses, and most of them with labs. So where do I get the time to complete the work because this requires a lot of time. So it's so important that we plan. But one of the things I have learned is that I'm not going to get a whole day where I can only do the grant work, writing. I will not be able to get a whole month. So I just budget for some time. One of the things I have done me personally that has worked for me is that my 1 day a week when I don't teach 1 day a week, and I devoted that to grant writing, grant reporting, and I was able, just that one thing that I do. And somebody also taught us that even if you can get 1 hour a day, just that 1 hour, but you have a plan. So I realized that for me, coming from a small college, where the teaching load is so overwhelming, that if I can plan, at least have 1 hour a day or 1 day a week, whatever your plan. But it is always very important to plan. For last but not least, maybe my accent betrays me. My background is not so much English, but I have learned English. It's so important to get a colleague that can read the narrative, correct even the small spelling mistakes, just the grammar. So when reviewers look at the grammar, they're just put off. It's like, wow, they couldn't even check the grammar. But also just the narrative, that it flows. If somebody can understand what you're trying to say, then the reviewers will understand what you're trying to say. Sometimes we can have the idea, the concept, but how we put it and write it down so that it's simple, so that it flows, so that the reviewers are not struggling to get the concept. I think that is so important. What about our budget? It has to be reasonable. And I know that we have to justify it. Now, I think my time is almost gone, but the next slide is my last one. And I guess I'm ready to stop. So what are the institutional challenges? I already talked about teaching load. A lot of work. And so we have to be very, very strategic about planning. And sometimes there tends to be bureaucracy. I believe that if we have a lot of time, then we can be able to, jump the harder ladders of bureaucracy, just as it takes a lot of time. And therefore, I want to encourage my colleagues that grant writing is a lot of work. It needs time, it needs careful planning, but it can be done. If I can do it, you can do it. Thank you so much for the privilege to share my story.
Thank you so much to both you and Monica for your REEU presentations. The students at Green River and Bowie State, I think, are very, very lucky to have you all as faculty and have these projects that they can participate in. And I did notice in the chat that some people were asking about changes in projects due to COVID. And I'll just mention again, the breakout rooms would be a great place to kind of talk a little bit more about how COVID is impacting projects, especially for this year and maybe for next year's plans as well. So just to mention that. And so next, we will focus on another AFRI program, the Professional Development for Agricultural Literacy program. And the goal of this program is to increase the number of K-14 educational professionals trained in food and agricultural and sciences, again, with the end goal being looking at the workforce of the future. And to also develop the skills necessary for integrating food and ag sciences into their classrooms and opportunities to explore career paths. As Anna was mentioning, a lot of students don't know all of the careers that are available out there in food and ag sciences, and usually think of, healthcare careers when they're thinking of science careers, especially at the K-14 level. And then also to give the opportunity to develop mentorship with professional and business leaders and faculty to get to your project goals. And for fiscal year 2020, the max award for PDAL was $300,000 for projects. And so for our PDAL Award Spotlight, we have Susan Moore from IAA Charitable Foundation. Her project is entitled Illinois Agriculture in the Classroom Agricultural Academy, Integrating Agri-Science, and it was awarded in fiscal year 2019. And I just also want to point out that while a lot of people on this call and a lot of our applicants are from colleges and universities, we also have lots of opportunities for other types of institutions, nonprofits, foundations, individuals, small businesses to apply to our programs as well. And so I will turn it over to Susan to give her presentation.
Thank you, Kellyanne. Pleasure to be with you all today. We were absolutely thrilled to be a first-time recipient, so happy to share with you today a little bit about us and our experience. So I am the director of the IAA Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the Illinois Farm Bureau. I would classify us as that small shop when it comes to capacity. I do have a staff of 3, including myself. We spend about 60% of our time doing fundraising efforts to fund the program of work for Illinois Agriculture in the Classroom. So that includes events, major gifts, planned gifts, and grants. So as the development officer, I challenge myself to wear as many hats as I can. So that has helped me grow and learn and experience through grant writing as one of those elements. Now, our education department is separate, but we obviously collaborate very closely. They have a staff of 4. They are tasked with developing the curriculum and trainings and also supporting the grassroots network of 81 county ag literacy coordinators. So Illinois Agriculture in the Classroom is a partnership. We work with Extension, Soil and Water, our Department of Agriculture, and our commodity groups. And ultimately that objective is to advance ag literacy through STEM lessons and engage and empower teachers with content to successfully infuse into the classroom. We say we're not asking teachers to teach agriculture, but rather use examples in agriculture to integrate into their lessons in science, technology, English, and math. On an annual basis, we're proud to reach 650,000 students and about 60,000 educators through our efforts. Next slide. So when I looked at the criteria for the professional development for ag literacy program, our efforts fit 3 out of the 4 goals to a T. So that gave me the confidence to move forward with an application, and that was reinforced by encouragement from the National Ag in the Classroom program. And so what we proposed is a teacher training, a very in-depth teacher training program we call agricultural academies, typically happen over the summertime with a specific focus on integrating agri-science. So for our duration of the program, we wanted to span this over multiple years. That allowed us to increase our budget, and in being successful in receiving those dollars helps us secure that funding, knowing that we can continue to offer those academies well into the future. So as far as that project purpose, Ag in the Classroom has a proven and effective delivery model that helps get objective and scientifically based content into the hands of teachers to every county throughout the state of Illinois. And teacher trainings has been one of our most effective models to ensure that the student population in Illinois gains that ag literacy. So very high level in implementation, we present each year 25 multiple day training sessions and field trips known as agricultural academies. They're attended by approximately 500 educators. They will leave with increased knowledge and confidence to teach subjects in food and agricultural sciences, as well as STEM integration. So we went very in depth in the application to the types of trainings that we will conduct. We broke them into 2 classifications, level 1 and level 2, where level 2 has a higher level of output. Those teachers are physically creating curriculum that will be evaluated by the end of those sessions. All of the trainings were presented 5 specific units of work. We also detailed each session with an outline, so it was very clear what the teachers would experience each day during those trainings, and then finally produced a very detailed point system for evaluation. I mentioned in level 2 that a work product would be produced and that it comes along with a metrics for evaluation. that helps us show what those teachers were able to accomplish through the course of those trainings. And then all trainings also do a pre and post evaluation that really helps us measure not only their knowledge gained, but their comfort level and their willingness to infuse subjects related to agriculture and the rapidly changing and expanding career options available to students. So how we broke that budget down, just real quickly at the end there, thank you, Kellyanne, was to kind of quantify based on our previous experience for what our costs incur, and then also the number of teachers that we plan to reach. So we broke that down as kind of a per head, $50 per teacher at that $500 mark, or the 500 teacher mark, and then multiplied that out over 4 years. We then also asked for a very modest amount to help cover materials and supplies as well, which gets us to our total of $120. So I mentioned that I'm a development officer, I'm a self-taught grant writer, and a first-time applicant to the NIFA program. So I'm going to just kind of detail for you some of my tales as a first-time applicant. And first and foremost, preparing to apply, it is definitely all in the details. I joke that if you're a paper person, get ready to plant a few trees in order to replace the ones that you're going to kill on the copier. The manuals do seem extremely overwhelming when you start, but once you dig into them, you soon realize they are incredibly detailed. So they will walk you through step by step, screenshot by screenshot of every section and requirement, which is very helpful. Now, it's not to say it's not time consuming. I estimate that I spent probably a total of 50 hours on preparation, writing, response, and the project initiation. I would usually try to carve out 4 to 5 hour chunks of time, so probably 10 to 12 sittings total. Checklists are definitely your friend. Organization, time management are key. For all the educational institutions out there, sorry, the closest thing I can compare it to is writing a term paper, where you really need quiet, uninterrupted hours, which I know are so hard for so many of us to find. Before we went to complete remote environments, that was always, my call to my team that I was going to work from home where there were less disruptions, and that's what really allowed me to drill through a lot of the grant work. So I had a lot of pre-meetings with our education staff to outline each objective, requirement, fully vetting out the options and the methods for execution, basically an interview style with our program staff to make sure that we could answer the questions and accomplish the goals of the grant before I even put pen to paper. For some of us who haven't dipped into the grant world, this is writing to a new audience, and it is pretty technical. So as that self-taught grant writer, I had to make adjustments in a lot of the habits that I'd picked up as a development officer. And I learned that there's style differences in technical writing versus more creative or persuasive writing. So development officers are pretty good at the heartstring stuff. And in this case, it just doesn't apply. You're appealing to logic over emotion. And that's kind of the opposite of what we might be used to in appeal writing. It's also very important to start from square one and assume that no one knows anything about who you are. Picture yourself describing a pair of blue jeans to someone who's never seen them before. You can't call them blue jeans. You'll have to explain their purpose, describe what they look like, help someone understand why they might be useful, and even justify their expense. I completely agree with the advice of giving your proposal to someone outside of your area who has no knowledge, because sometimes it's just hard for us to get out of our own heads about what we know. Setting yourself up for success is really about doing what works, and realistic is good. This isn't the time for your pie in the sky dreams and visions for what the future of your organization might hold. Those conversations might work with some of our individual donors, but this is the time to be pragmatic. And for us, that meant building on a model that has already proven to be successful. It doesn't have to be shiny and new to get funded. It needs to be reliable and a system that can competently show results and have a strong impact. Finally, when in doubt, ask. The NIFA staff are really helpful, really. I was blown away by their responsiveness and helpfulness. I often found myself reading through instructions and still needing additional clarification just to make sure I was on the right track. And they were always there to provide that information to me each time, and they truly felt like a partner from day one.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. And I promise we didn't ask for them to say nice things about us as program staff, but it's really great to hear the positive experiences that the grantees have had working with NIFA. And for our last program that we will spotlight, this is a non-AFRI program, and it is the Hispanic Serving Institutions Education Grants Program. And in fiscal year 2020, had about $11.2 million in funding. And the purpose of this grants program is to strengthen the capacity of Hispanic serving institutions to teach food and ag sciences, and to help produce a more diverse workforce by supporting undergraduate and graduate students from underrepresented backgrounds. And this program supports multiple areas, including curriculum development, professional development for faculty, student experiences, and investment in infrastructure, for example, buying equipment for your labs or improving your libraries. The eligibility is for institutions with a minimum of 25% undergraduate full-time Hispanic enrollment, and that applies to about 539 institutions in the United States and Puerto Rico. And if you are an organization on this call that doesn't quite meet that enrollment, but you serve a large community of Latino students or a Latino community, find an institution that you can partner with. Collaborating is encouraged and a great way to kind of spread the money around and get a great impact. And the awards in this program range from $50,000 for a conference grant, $250,000 for a regular grant, and $1 million for a collaboration grant. And for fiscal year 2021, we have our RFA out, and the deadlines are set for the end of January. So if you're interested in this program, please look into it and start writing. And so I will turn it over to Savannah Rugg and Brandon Watley from Austin Community College as our HSI Spotlight. And their project is entitled Opportunities in Agriculture, and they were awarded in fiscal year 2017. So take it away, Savannah and Brandon.
Thank you, Kellyanne. This is Brandon Watley, and I'm going to kick it off for us. So as Kellyanne pointed out, our project title is Opportunities in Agriculture. And really, our project centered around building a new agricultural sciences program at Austin Community College is where we are. Previously, we had began our ag program through our continuing education units and developed a pretty robust grouping of students who had interest in proceeding beyond just what a continuing education environment offered. So with that in mind, we looked for opportunities to help incentivize students to come to the program and build on their current successes through different grants. And the NIFA grant seemed to make a lot of sense at the time. And we worked with I worked directly with our continuing education department and our grants office to help build a program, who in turn helped us staff and incentivize our existing plans to build a credit program, which ultimately brought Savannah to us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Savannah Rugg, and she's going to kind of walk you through where we are today and her experiences to this point as the project director.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Brandon. So my name is Savannah Rugg. I am the department chair of the Agricultural Sciences Department at ACC. So like Brandon mentioned, we are a very new program. So part of this grant was hiring me. So Brandon's going to cover part of the application process, and I'm just going to cover the grant itself. So our main objectives are first of all, to begin an agricultural degree program. And then secondly, have agricultural science workforce promotion. And thirdly, student recruitment and support. So I'm going to address how we're managing all of these different objectives. So first off, I would say a key aspect to our project is having our data collector, and that was written into the grant itself when they were divvying up the budget. So we had written into the grant a small budget for an hourly data collector, which has helped to organize all of the grant activities. So when it does come to our annual progress reviews, we have a progress review, and then we also have our annual, what do I want to call it, when we turn in our budgets. So, so she is essential, and I would say that she helps keep track of everything. She knows the grant inside and out, and that is just extremely helpful when I'm developing a new program, and I am currently the only faculty member. There are now 4 adjunct faculty members as well that I've hired within the last year. And we also have 1 senior lab tech. So in terms of just keeping everything organized, she's amazing. So between 2018 and 2019 is when the workforce and transfer degrees that I've been working on, the accreditation process started. So I had to develop a workforce degree and also a transfer degree. So the transfer degree is aimed for students that wish to pursue a bachelor's in agricultural science at a 4-year institution. And then the workforce degree is an Associates of Applied Science, and that's for students that are more interested in entering the workforce directly. So those we had to get through SACS, the Southern Association of Colleges, an accrediting, yada, 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 body to get the full accreditation. So we were fully accredited as of fall of 2019, and that's when we began offering courses. So we had to kind of begin offering courses before we could begin offering scholarships and stipends to attract students to the program. So at this point, I have awarded 3 scholarships, which is not as many as I would have liked to, but that has been since, since about a year. So within a year, we've awarded 3 scholarships. And I currently have these scholarships open for this spring. They actually close this Friday. So I manage these criteria of the scholarships. So I made the criteria. I set that all up with our scholarship office, and then they just award the funds. So I do the reviews of the applications. I have a couple of other colleagues that help me review them, and then I award them. So once I have the students that are going to be awarded, I just let the scholarship office know, and they give them their funds. And since the program started, I've developed 14 new agriculture courses that are included in either degree plan. So there is the transfer degree plan and the workforce degree plan, of which there's a total of 14 ag classes that can be taken. The other way we've been really trying to do some outreach, obviously we can talk about this more later, the effects of COVID, but here you can see these are some pictures of a harvest festival that we had on the farm, and our USDA extension agent is actually right there in the upper left, doing a little demo there with some visitors. So we've been trying to have some events on our 17-acre farm, which I should have mentioned as well. So we're actually located in Elgin, Texas, about 20 miles east of Austin. And here you can see a picture of one of the fields. So it's 17 acres. There's a small orchard that's been planted. The majority of it is in pasture for a small herd of sheep that we have. And we also have a market garden for students to learn how to grow vegetable crops. So it is very exciting. We're going to be offering our first semester length small scale farming class this spring. And again, if you guys want to ask about COVID precautions, I can talk to that later. And I think that's about it in terms of what I wanted to touch on. The majority of the grant funding, I will say, is allocated for scholarships. So that is the, oh yeah, sorry. So that is the bulk of the funding, and we actually haven't dispersed it yet. So I'm doing my best to catch up, and we have already applied for an extension of our grant because I wasn't hired on until a year after the grant had been awarded to us. So the grant essentially sat idle until I was hired. But now I'll let Brandon cover the application process and anything I may have missed, because I'm sure I might have.
Thank you, Savannah. So as Savannah pointed out, we do have our own farm on our Elgin campus, which was already in the works. We had worked, so just to be clear, this particular grant didn't help fund the building of the farm. It was really more to get the program, the credit program off the ground, and working directly to hire Savannah as the program chair and the subject matter expert. There was a lot of, discussion and thought went into this application process. And I think that you really want to look at your how and your why. We already knew that we were going to build a credit program. We already knew that we had visions, but the grant really was the impetus to help get us moving and moving forward and keeping us on track to hit these benchmarks that we'd already set. And so establishing going out for the grant to help fund student support predominantly it was what the goal was, is to help support students coming into the program. We had hoped that that it would help move us faster down the line. So I think, like any grant, you really want to reach out to others who have experience with NIFA grants. We did a lot of that front end work. I reached out routinely to Dr. Alexis Rosellas at UT Rio Grande Valley, who is very experienced in NIFA grants. And frankly, that's where Savannah came from. She is a graduate of that program, which we are so honored to have. Just networking with him individually was very helpful. And then it got us to thinking about future partnerships, future collaborations, and future collaboration grant opportunities. And then also working with Texas State, one of our advisory board members that's on our advisory board for this program, who was already on the existing advisory board when we had under continuing education, is Dr. Nicole Wagner at Texas State. So networking with these individuals was wildly helpful to kind of better understand what the NIFA grant, what to expect, what it might look like, and understand that it's very doable. So in doing so, planning, your goals really need to meet the grant priorities. They need to be problem specific. So what problem are you trying to solve? What are you trying to accomplish, and how will your proposal yield a result or an improvement? What do you consider, how will you collect and measure data? You really need to think about that going into any grant opportunity. For those of you that have not been involved with too many grants yet, you really need to be thinking about your deliverables. How are we going to deliver, and then how are we going to collect and measure that data, supporting data to show that we're meeting those deliverables. So I always find it wise and useful to use tools such as driver diagrams, process maps, flow diagrams, and really develop an aim statement that explicitly, states what your desired outcomes are, and express in a measurable and time-specific way. And if you include these things within your application, it certainly makes your application stand out and adds value. So I would highly recommend going through a process of that nature prior to applying. Really plan ahead. I think many of the other presenters today spoke of that planning ahead concept, and I really want to applaud that group, because they certainly, you can see the passion and the motivation behind what they do. And then again, think about innovation. What makes your project innovative and stand out? What's different and unique? Obviously, starting a new program is not unique or different, but it is unique or different when you partner directly with continuing education in the process, and we've done that very well throughout. We have an opportunity for students who come in that do not think that they want to go on for college credit and continue their education, have an opportunity to start in our CE program. And that just kind of builds confidence and moves them in that right direction. It opens opportunities and doors for them that they might not have seen or known. So with that, we can go into the Zoom breakouts, and I thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Brandon and Savannah. Just a quick, huge thank you to all 4 of our presenters' presentations. I know this is a busy week for a lot of people wrapping up the semester, so I appreciate you being here with us. Hi, Calvin.
I would like to make a general comment in relationship to some of the information that I just heard.
Sure, go ahead.
And I think it's very, very important. I appreciate the significant effort that is put into drafting proposals. And I understand that the majority of you who will be in the position to draft proposal are scientists. And your dedication and commitment to the science is obvious. But I encourage you, I encourage you very significantly. And one of the individuals that was on the line talked about the time and effort that goes into preparing a proposal. That time and effort that you put into preparing that proposal will pay off significant dividends in the future. I can guarantee you that. And not only position yourself to be selected, but in position yourself to better administer the grant after you are selected. I also encourage you to not neglect the financial aspects. Oftentimes, grantees in preparing their proposals, they neglect the financial aspects of the award, such as budgets and understanding how the budget ties in and all the elements associated with that. So I encourage you to pay attention to those elements, as well as some of the regulatory significance that goes into grant making. And once you are privy to getting the award and privileged to get the award, I really encourage you to develop relationships with your grant specialists and the grants office, because they are there positioned to assist you in the administration of your grant as it relates to financial matters, and to make sure that you are compliant with some of the regulatory things as it relates to the terms and conditions of the award. So I really encourage you to develop those relationships, be in communication, be in contact with AMD. That's the office that I represent, the Office of Awards Management, or Awards Management Office. So I encourage you to do those things. Identify your grant specialist early, communicate with them often, and discuss issues and problems that you may have, because it will make for an easier relationship and administration of your award. That's all. I just wanted to add that to some of the discussions that we've heard thus far.
Just to keep moving forward, is just open the floor for general questions and questions to any specific presenters that anyone would like. And so I welcome you all to type your questions in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question, if that's easier, feel free to do that as well. And I apologize for the breakout rooms not functioning.
Good afternoon. This is Ray and Kellyanne. No worries at all. If I can offer, I guess, my name is Ray Alley, and I am a national program leader with NIFA, working predominantly in competitive programs and graduate education programs, but also workforce development programs and others within AFRI and outside of the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative. I guess if I can ask, some of the feedback that we receive many times from small to mid-sized institutional applicants is, for a lack of better terms, a sort of trepidation for even competing in these types of awards, meaning how competitive are we going to be for the larger agricultural colleges and other universities and institutions. And I often share with people, the only definitive outcome is if you don't apply, okay? So with that being said, I would just ask for Monica and Anne, and for some of the other presenters, how were you able to capture that framing, that articulate case for support as far as why your project was relevant within the context of the size of your institution to make it so meritorious and competitive? If I can ask, how did you capture that lightning in the bottle for the good of the other participants on this call. If that's okay, Kellyanne, but I thought it might be a helpful place to start.
No, that's a great question. And any of our presenters, feel free to take that one.
I'll go ahead and take first stab because I'd like to bring Matt Swenson, the Director of Grants at Green River College, into this conversation. He is a very crucial component in working together with us in making sure that we get the subject matter that's going to really hit the ground where it's going to make the most difference. And in terms of how it's packaged, he is very good at putting the lightning in the bottle, I think is how it was stated. So Matt, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, and hello everyone. Frankly, Monica, I think what I'd say in that regard is that what matters most is to have faculty, like you and your colleagues, who have a clear vision of where you want to go and have the resources and partnerships in place to make it happen. Frankly, you've got good product. So as a grant writer, I think that a big part of my role is to kind of help to try and address some of the more administrative aspects of developing a proposal so that you can really focus on the disciplinary material and on really kind of articulating your thoughts into plans and documenting them. And I think that kind of helps to make the case to our own institution as well, because if they can see that you have a cogent and detailed plan and that it's associated with where your program and the college want to go, then you're frankly head and shoulders above most other programs of study, which is a valuable secondary benefit of developing a grant proposal like this.
Thanks, Matthew, for sharing that. Do any other presenters want to talk about the capturing the lightning in the bottle? I really like that phrase, Ray.
Okay, thank you. This is Anne. Let me just also share a little bit about how it is that, and if I had the question, is how even being a small institution and probably not thinking that we can make it. I think for me, I would say that it took the leadership. We work, and I work very, very closely again with my Office of Sponsored Program Manager, who is here with me. And if it's okay, Dr. Covington, if you could just say a word. They have encouraged the faculty, and they have given us opportunity of training. And their encouragement, I remember the first time I ever even thought that I could write a grant was when one of our leaders had called all of us and really kind of talked to us like a little workshop that you can do it. And they were there with us, helping us to begin to think that you can do it. And from there, I actually convinced myself that probably I can. And tried. I know that it comes with a lot of trials, and I was very, very, very privileged that my first attempt with the NIFA was successful, but I've also learned that in grant writing, it's not always the case, and never giving up. If I don't manage to get a grant the first attempt, there are always reviewers' comments. So I just go on and improve it. And who knows, maybe the next time I will. So I really want to appreciate the leadership that we have, our sponsored program office that are always working with us and encouraging us. I remember Dr. Covington, again, I wanted to say something. She's the one who shared this opportunity with me and encouraged me. And I said, let's do it. And Dr. Covington, if you're still here, do you want to say something, please?
I am here, and thank you so much, Dr. Asano, for all the kind words. I would like to make a couple of comments. I think it's already been said that planning is paramount. And by planning, not only to adequately manage your time as the proposer, but also to be in close communication with your Office of Research and Sponsored Programs so that we are able to kind of implement a timeline so that we have a timely and an on-time submission. Now, we are a very small shop. I'm the whole pre-award area for Bowie. So every external grant comes to me. That means I read every one. I draft budget. I help with budget justifications. I help to make sure that the project aligns with whatever the guidelines are that came from the funder. And those are very important things because we want our proposers to be focusing on content and making sure that the content is strong. In addition to that, your grants office would be able to maybe do some of the communication with the program officer or making that connection for you if there were questions. So the grants office can be very, very supportive, and grant writing can be very lonesome. So it's nice to know that you would have some support so that, you know, you might, even if it's just to have somebody say, you can do it, keep going, Dr. Osano, you can do it. So those kinds of things are good. I've heard it said more than once to build that relationship with the grants office. I think it is crucial. Thank you so much.
Kellyanne, I have a question for the presenters. This is Suresh from USDA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. How did the presenters find time to write the applications and to conduct project activities? Were they able to buy or reduce their teaching load from grant funds?
So I'll chime in quickly on this. This is Brandon Watley from Austin Community College. So I'm an administrator, so it was a little easier for me to carve out some time to work on this particular application than it would be for Savannah. But I can speak to Savannah has had to carve out, as a project director currently, has had to carve out time to immerse herself in all of the outcomes of the grant. As I pointed out kind of in our presentation, we were going to do much of this work anyway. We were going to create a program. So the fact that her grant required activities aligned with her work, her day-to-day work activities was just part of the beauty of that particular application, is that we were going to move in this direction, and it was going to be a requirement of that particular individual to begin with. And I would say that I'll let Savannah speak to carving out time in her own words, but I think that was just part of the planning that went into the application from our standpoint.
Yeah, I would say, as Brandon just mentioned, my job is basically the grant, so I'm fully immersed in the grant in my day-to-day work. Especially as the department chair, I'm not only the faculty member, but I am heading the department in a specific direction. So yeah, just every day. And I would say, now that I have my feet under me a little bit more, there's we have our reports on the calendar. We know what to submit. We have it ready 2 weeks in advance. We are constantly updating every month because we have so much new data. We have new students enrolling, new courses, new syllabi, new curriculum. So as we're hiring adjuncts, we need to record all of that. So literally so almost everything I do goes back to this grant in one way or another.
But this is Anne. I'm a full-time professor. I teach full-time. And I think that I just wanted to chip in quickly, because it's so wonderful when you have the opportunity to devote all your time to the grant activities. But as for me, I teach full-time. I was not able to factor in release time, which I know is a possibility in grants. And maybe I dare to add that my grant was just awarded. So one of the things that helped me to begin to do some work is just that the research piece was being infused in my class. So as I teach my regular classes, we are also in doing the grant activity. My classes, all the students do a research project for the whole semester. And so the activity for the research project, since we got this award, is the grant activity. So somehow that helps me to do the grant activity and also to continue to do my regular teaching. The other piece is that the global component are done during summer. And usually, therefore, I can take off during summer and do the work. Of course, the administration continues whether you're teaching or not. And usually that is a tough thing, but somehow we have been able to manage. So I think that is really a great question, because I think that is some of the things I struggle with as a full-time instructor that is still teaching 4 or 5 courses, but still must do the grant activities. So I wish and hope that next time I'll have some release time.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Carlos Ortiz. I'm the National Program Leader leading the K-14 education portfolio. Being respectful of everybody's time, I want to ask a quick question to all the panelists. What is the one challenge, and just maybe like 30 seconds for each, the one challenge and the one benefit that you have found through the application and the implementation of your program? So let's start maybe in the order that we presented. So Monica, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Dr. Ortiz. I think our biggest benefit, I'm going to start with that, is that we are able to, as people working directly with the students and seeing the benefits that they get from employment, we're able to take a vision that we have for our program and something that we really feel would move our program forward, and we're able to actualize it, to put it into action, and not only do that, but do it in an intentional way that we can take data and improve off the process. So it may be written for X number of students in terms of impact, but the impact is really much larger when you take that data and you actually incorporate it into your department. It navigates your path forward on how to improve the entire program, right? And so that's a really huge piece. In terms of maybe places where it's hard as a small institution to do this, I really value that our school has this grant writer position because of that connection with the subject matter expert in terms of the natural resource piece, right, for in our case, but with somebody who's familiar with finding these grants and can learn from the process from other departments is really, really an incredible opportunity. I've worked at other institutions where I was the primary grant writer for all the grants, and there's a huge synergy here at a small institution that makes these possible. I think the hardest part for me as a PI on this grant is trying to find the time to sift through when we need to ask certain questions. A lot of the documentation and the websites and all of that to try and find an answer. And so when we are able to email like Dr. Ali and ask a question and get pretty quick feedback, which we have gotten from NIFA, that's a very helpful aspect to help us patch together that weakness. But that sometimes it's not in a language that I can understand quickly.
Thank you, Monica. And in 30 seconds or so, one challenge and one benefit that you have had from your project.
So in terms of the challenge is definitely COVID. We were supposed to bring students in a small van all the way out and, you know, set up a study abroad trip to New Zealand as well this last summer. And so that has been a huge challenge. And one benefit is that I am seeing students being hired directly out of this program specifically for the skills that this grant brought to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Let's move to Anne real quick. One benefit and one challenge.
Okay, yes, COVID. I could not travel, even though I really had students just so interested interested. I think I got over like what 100 applicants, but we could not travel. So COVID was really a big challenge. We are hopeful that we are going to do next year. Grateful that we are talking about the vaccination. So this is really great. But benefit, I mean, when our class project, when we began to do, we are doing hydroponics. I'm sure most of us understand that. And my students began to cultivate and grow plants without touching soil. You know, my girls, it was just so wonderful. And you know, they are so happy and they're just like, wow. And I could do this even in my backyard. I said, yes. So really, it just makes learning so different. And I'm excited about the project. I wish I had more than 30 minutes, but thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Susan, next to you, as a nonprofit, challenge and benefit of your program.
I think the challenge is being decentralized in our efforts and relying on other people's actions and getting that information to me so I can properly report. And then the benefit is just the possibilities of expansion and opportunities to apply for different grants.
Brandon and Savannah, what do you have from you?
So some of the challenges were the grant was awarded before I was hired on. So it took us a while before we could actually really understand the grant and get into utilizing all of those funds. And I would say the benefits are that within 2 years of this program starting this spring 2021, we'll already have 4 graduates. So.
I'm going to do a shameless.
I did want to mention one other thing. The first entire year that I was hired on with ACC, my entire time was released. I was not teaching. So I was fully working on just developing the program. So I definitely wanted to mention that that time was allotted beforehand.
And the grant supported that extensively. So very thankful.
Thank you. Kellyanne, back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And just 2 more slides to wrap up the conversation. Just wanted to point out some upcoming events that we have. On December 15th, there are webinars for the Women and Minorities in STEM Fields program, as well as SPECA, the Secondary Education 2-Year Post-Secondary Education Agriculture in the Classroom program. There were a lot of inquiries about SPECA, so please register for that. You can find the links on our NIFA events calendar there at the bottom. And any deadlines, webinars are always posted there. So kind of bookmark that and keep checking. And then I also have some resources listed here that are just anywhere from finding a funding opportunity, COVID-19 information, and then grant submission resources and grant writing resources from NIFA. And then the last slide is just thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our presenters and for our NIFA program staff that were on this call with us to answer questions. And if we weren't able to get to your question today, just put it in the chat and I will be in touch with responses to those. And my email address is on this slide if you want to contact me, and I will get you in touch with the right person to answer your questions. And if you know a specific program you're interested in applying for, the contact staff is listed in the RFA in Appendix 1. So that's a great place to look for that information. And so with that, I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoons, and thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.